How's it going, mate? You okay?
Yeah, all good. You?
Yeah, yeah. Well, apart from having a few technical issues with technology and everything that brings stress-wise, I didn't realise how my life revolves around Wi-Fi. Came in, put the TV on. I thought, oh, I'll put Disney Plus on. I'll watch Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and it just, even though yeah, I don't want to talk about it. I'm getting wound up by it now.
Good, good. Yeah, well, I mean, I have to be honest, it's probably been a tough week, and we touched base earlier in the week, and yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah, it's.
I have a tendency to sort of reflect a lot, I suppose.
Yeah, I've been the same. As I said to you the other day, that when lockdown was announced, I kind of thought I'm ready, I'm braced. I wouldn't say I wasn't bothered. I was, but I thought I can take it on the chin. I can try and live my life as normal. But then waking up the following day for work, I just lack of not a lack of motivation to work or to do what I normally do, but just getting out of bed, it was just like snooze, 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 um, and more
Yeah,
snooze.
fatal. Yeah.
And um, once I was up, um, it's deja vu, isn't it? I mean, Groundhog Day again and again and again and again and again. So
Yeah, I think it's been interesting, sort of reflecting on like personal tendencies and sort of is the way I was sort of thinking about it, and how easy it is to get caught in that loop. Like obviously it's been a bit of a strange week, and lots of sort of stressors at work, at home, and just feeling really, for want of a better word, anxious, I suppose.
yeah,
And just I'm not. I realised in reflection that I'm not very good at doing nothing, and I sort of summed it up like with the expression like I've got to try and find a way to change nothing being my enemy to nothing being my friend, and unwind from, it's interesting, unwind from doing things to doing nothing. When, like you said about technology, then it's just like multiple choices of things that you could do, access to things, books to read, etc.,
yeah, it's
etc., and yet still found it really, frustrating, and partly because, uh, as we've talked about before, that expression, there were so many things that, for all the right and obvious reasons, were out of my control. And it's all very well knowing the information, but doesn't matter how much you know, you still got to try and put it into practice.
yeah, yeah,
And it
definitely.
was tough. I must admit, it was a tough day that I had, and I just needed to just basically, like we talked about before, accept things, accept that it's tough. And then that too shall pass, as they say. Everything passes. All emotions are transient. Everything keeps moving. You're not sad all of the time. You're not happy all of the time.
Yeah,
And
but,
these things come and go, and sometimes you just have to ride it out, I
yeah.
suppose.
Well, you stole the words out of my mouth, really. That these feelings, emotions, go. They peak and trough, and I found it a little bit difficult this week as well. And it, we're talking about time and sort of how you use time and what do you do within that time. And like you said, there's so much you can do, and kind of got me reflecting on. Um, Obviously, a couple of years ago, well, I suppose it will be with me for a lifetime, really. You know, the gambling and sort of, when I was going through mentoring, counselling, I mean, I'm still slightly embarrassed to talk about that. I did go for sort of sessions, therapy sessions, GA sessions. They spoke about the gambling triangle, and I'm sure this can be applied to most things. But one side was time, one side was money, and I believe one side was access. And they obviously said there's three sides to a triangle. If you remove one of the sides, you have no triangle. And one of those sides was time. You know, maximize your time, use it productively, use it wisely, use it um, positively. And during, I wouldn't even say like the official lockdown, but when the tiered restrictions came in, you know, like tier 1, 2, 3, like on my Facebook, all I saw advertising wise, and I don't know if you saw it as well, was like just betting sites, like ones that I've never heard of, and I thought, well, okay, so I blocked them, I deleted them, and you know I changed my ad preferences, and nor do I speak about it. So when I spoke to my partner and a few other people, I was like, is it just me that sees them, or do other people see them? And obviously, luckily, it wasn't just me. It was loads of other people, and it kind of got me thinking about what I do with my time. So I am talking about technology now. I mean, it's just saying that my internet is unstable. So carrying on with the theme of what I've had earlier, but instead of accessing my phone, I've got so many books that I need to start reading. So I don't need to read or look at social media as much, or I'm productive with my time now. I think the best I can, but it kind of came all flooding back about, you know, obviously all the betting shops are shut. I'm barred. I've self excluded myself from all of them. You know, I'm talking far and wide, like proper far and wide. You know, not just 2 miles. You name it. I'm banned. I've self excluded or banned myself from them, and yeah, it's kind of
That's a very specific thing, isn't it? You know, we've talked about this many moons ago. Like, as an addiction goes, gambling is very specific. Like, I try and compare the thought of if you're addicted to, it's it's only on a par, I think, with alcohol addiction, because the prevalence of alcohol, you know, it's not just a case of avoiding pubs and bars. You'd have the temptation if you just went food shopping. It's in
yeah,
the supermarkets, it's in your local store. The
yeah,
same with gambling. You know, it's there's a bookmakers down the road. You know, and there's places that you can go to gamble, and you don't even need to leave your house to gamble.
yeah,
In the same way, that's where I think it's you know, obviously the reasonings, like you talked about that triangle, they must be the same for most addictions, and I'm sure, you know, there's lots of people out there that would resonate and understand better than me, you know, about addiction. But just purely like, I always thought it's one of those hard things that it's there, it's all the time. Both you and I come together in the first place because of our love of football. I've never known so many teams being sponsored by gambling in every single advert. As much as they say be gamble aware, it, it like I even heard the other day that on FIFA they're introducing, you know, chips that you can gamble on,
yeah. Well,
something along those
yeah,
lines.
that's been about for a
For
while. And
kids,
yeah,
kids play FIFA.
yeah. No, that's been about for a while. FIFA coins or cards, and a couple of clubs not so long ago. Well, two are local to me: Aston Villa and Wolves, and Celtic. I think were the other club who, on their junior fan pages below, was like the links to their sponsor at the time, which was whatever it was. But I think the thing for me with it really is you mentioned time earlier, and during lockdown, well, it's almost a year, isn't it, since the whole COVID thing, well, I think it is a year, you know, when it burst on the scene in
Yeah.
China, and obviously Feb, March, lockdowns became real. That time I've kind of reflected a lot on how lucky I am in September of last year to sort of be in my new place, which there's a bit of a glimpse in the background, and I'm back on the property ladder, mortgage. But then on the flip side, I've had that time to think about what could have been, like what my life could have been. I think both personally and professionally, that um, I think I was doing okay professionally, and I'd like to think it didn't affect me at work. But personally, I think, oh, what could my life have been like? And then 4 and a bit years later, you know, I'm in the situation I'm in now, and touch wood, I'm employed by multiple organisations, you know, looking at consultancy and branching out in that sense. But yeah, time.
It's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult to look back. You know, I think it's an impossible thing. You know, I don't really. People say they don't have any regrets, but really they just haven't really maybe framed it in the same way that you just described. Is we can all look back like a slide, you know, like sliding doors moments when your life could have gone one way or the other, and it's a very dangerous path. Like I've always said, you know, it's interesting the psychology of how your brain works, really, and we must all go through the same sort of thing. But how you react, how you respond to those things, it's not. You don't really. I suppose when we break down what control the controllable means is there are certain things that are always in life going to be outside of your influence. It's not what happens to you, it's how you choose to respond to those things. And it was interesting, no matter how I intellectualized and knew that I was being now controlled by the uncontrollables all of a sudden, it didn't get me out of that thinking. It was that void, and how the psychology of how your brain will always tell you the worst case scenario. I don't know many people would go, you know, oh, this is changing, this is going to happen, oh, it's going to be amazing. No, your brain will always feel it, with the worst case scenario. It will always put it in a context of, oh, it's going to be really bad. Oh, you don't know how bad it's going to be, really, do you? You really need to think about how bad it's going to be. Nobody ever goes, oh, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and
Really
no,
weird, isn't it? How your
yeah,
brain works like that.
and you know, I'm sure I'm not the only one that thinks like this. That when that pattern of thought starts, I know sometimes I propel that thought further. You know, like, oh, it's going to be worse. Well, in my head, it's 5 times worse than what it actually is. And no, it's yeah, time is time waits for no man. You know, as my late uncle said to me not so long ago. But it's also it can be a blessing, a blessing in disguise. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fascinating. Like I said, you know, the amount of footballers that have obviously come out, you know, like Paul Merson, probably the most famous example of someone. And it's time that they always talk about time. That they go to training in the morning, in the afternoons is their time, you know. And obviously there was a drinking culture combined with that in the past, and it's time. And we just don't seem to know how to always consistently feel that positively. And I think it's just about accepting and giving yourself a break, but also like the amount of times I remember, obviously, that infamous conversation that we had out in Oslo, and just how it just struck me like how many times you were talking about gambling. You were talking about it, you'd recognize the problem, and yet the problem weren't changing.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose just to paint more of a picture for those who watch this, I can remember it in Oslo city centre, going up the hill, if memory serves me right, from like the
Yeah.
day's events and up to like the palace area, and getting the legendary Euro, couple of Euro hot dog. I do remember that. And I'm going to be transparent now. Like, there's only a couple of people that knew at the time, and you being one of them, and my nan, and she probably won't be best pleased that I'm sort of talking about her as such. But obviously, having a phone, we could communicate with one another. She messaged me to sort of, I think other people were starting to sniff it out. And I think that's kind of that conversation with you was like, you know, I felt I'm chatting shit a little bit now. I'm being a bit repetitive. I'm being a little bit, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to fix up. I'm going to seek help, whatever. Nothing was really happening. And I think after when I got back, I think that's when the penny was finally dropping. And the best analogy that I can think of,
just not dropping in the slot machines.
Yeah. Well, probably not the best example, but you know, like those charity tubs where you put the 1p, 2p, whatever it is, and it just spirals around for ages and ages and ages, and then suddenly it just disappears into a black hole. That's kind of what it felt like for me for a time, where it just kept spinning, and I knew what I was doing to myself. Luckily for me, like, I'm not in debt at all, really. I probably just pressed pause. I had the handbrake on what could have happened in my life. But like I said, luckily for me, I was still employed, and lots of stuff happened, both positively and negatively. And I try not to dwell on that because, like I said, it's one of them, isn't it? But I do remember that conversation because it was early evening. Oslo's a beautiful city. And then you called me out, really. It was like, you've a valid point. Like, I've spoken about it so many times. Yeah, and then
it's the old cliche, and it's to it really, of actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
And I can hear you were almost, maybe, do you think you were psyching yourself up?
A little bit, and I'm not afraid to admit this. I was probably arrogantly, I haven't got a problem, nothing wrong.
That's got to be normal, isn't it?
Yeah,
For sort of any sort of addiction.
I don't need help, but deep down, I was massively embarrassed. It was that gatekeeper stuff. You know, you look at friends, family, you know, siblings who are moving into new houses, and your mates have got this and that. And I'm thinking, I'm a dad of two. I'm very, very lucky to have employment and a range of things. But in terms of my living arrangements, I was like, with my, it was Oslo just over 3 years ago. It was, wasn't it? Memory serves me right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during that time, you know, I think I was living with my mum or transitioning to moving in with my dad, and you know, being 30 something, mate, I felt shit. You know, like work wise, as you know, I was going through some bits and bobs, and which presented some good opportunities as well as some challenges. But
You
yeah,
definitely had a lot, you know, when they talk about like the major stresses in life, you had a lot going on.
yeah,
It's how you react, isn't it? That's why I think, I know that I do have a like an addictive nature. And so I'm lucky in a way that sort of, apart from dabbling, you know, in the odd bit of weed or whatever, you know, when you were young and things, it 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 never really took me. I suppose I always wanted to be in control, and that fear of being out of control, whether it be drinking, whether it be, you know, drugs or gambling, never really got into things in like that, because that fear of being out of control
yeah,
was more of a motivator than the aspiration of wanting to join in, wanting to be one of the crowd, or wanting, you know, aspiring to get that big win, you know, whatever it is, you know, for that person. I'm thankful that I never really went down that pathway, because I
yeah,
do know I have addictive nature.
yeah. I mean, I don't wish it on anyone. You know, alcoholism, narcotics, gambling, Russell Brand sex, you know, well,
Yeah.
whatever it is, you know, I don't wish it on anyone. And looking back, you know, I dwell on why you know, I dwell on what triggered it, what the triggers were, and I can think about that all day long. And moving forwards, you know, everything's in place. You know, I've got bigger responsibilities on top of the.
That's I think that's the key word, Stuart. Though, isn't it? Really, it's moving forwards. Because ultimately, whatever it is, like you just touched upon, time don't stand still. It don't stop. It don't. You know, it's only perception.
Yeah,
You know, so like you can have a day at work and it goes really fast. And go, really, is that it? Time to go home. And other days it's just like, well, I've only been here an hour. Feels like a lifetime already.
yeah.
It's just a perception, isn't it? So time just keeps going forward. I remember when you know, my nieces once, she was playing with a cassette player, you know, and talk about out of the mouths of babes. She turned around, you know, and we were talking about something that happened in the last holidays or something, and she goes, "We haven't got a rewind button for time." And I was like, "Damn," you know. It's just she was only about 6, and it was just like, yeah, that's the point. I wish a lot of people. It's just there is just it only really leads to frustration looking
Yeah,
backwards.
and then I mean, some very wise words there from your niece. But I think that's the best advice I'd give everyone is that, you know, and a family member of mine once said, you know, there's only one direction you can look in, and that's obviously looking forwards. I know we all know hypothetically you can look elsewhere, but you know, looking forwards was the thing that kept me going. Was the thing of like, look, I have high aspirations and dreams, and both personally and professionally, as you know, and but at the time I wasn't really showing anything on both parts, and I think when the penny dropped and I was looking forwards, that's when I realised, look, I have to take ownership of things. I have to acknowledge how it affects those around me, and you know,
Do you think it was gradual, Stuart, or do you think it was an aha moment?
oh
You
no,
know, one of
gradual,
those.
yeah, gradual, and I think he got gradual to the haha moment. Definitely, you know, that conversation in Oslo, um, going to my first GA meeting, which I took my nan with me. My nan wasn't allowed in. You know, that was right at the beginning. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
but
I
then,
mean, that must have been a shock for you to be in other rooms and hear people's stories.
oh yeah. I mean, the first time I went in, I'll be transparent. I was a bit arrogant, not arrogant. Well, yeah, arrogant. I went in, and I'm glad I went, but it's very, very much what I thought it was going to be. What you see on TV, you know, you all sit in a circle and you say, but then I wasn't mature enough, I don't think, to accept my own. But the second time I made the effort to go, it, it made me realise, and I obviously won't go into depths of sharing stories, but I heard something, quite a few things every other week or once a week, and it made me realise, like, shit, like I'm extremely lucky, blessed, you know, on
You
many.
didn't fall as far as they did, sort of
Oh no,
thing.
I mean, and I'm not categorizing myself as like, you know, but compared to many, and I'm talking a big percentage here, you know, I was in the low categories, but it still wasn't the point. You know, they were saying, look, you know, even if you buy a raffle ticket, that's still deemed as what it is, as having a bet or a gamble. And I'm glad that I went through that process. And trust me, mate, there's plenty of times I wish I'd press rewind on many things. But then I'm like, well, it happened. I've moved forwards. You know, I've said sorry. I'm not in masses of debt at all. I'm not in any debt. I appreciate all the help and support I've ever had. I hope I've redeemed myself in some capacity. Professionally, I'm doing what I've always done, and I've always wanted to
I
make.
think it's an important lesson, Stuart, really, and it's a case of, you you know me well enough now that after all of the things that I've read and watched and listened to, and I probably spend a lot of time in, that Maslow's theory, fortunate enough to be in that top of the pyramid and self-actualization and, sort of but having that time and luxury where I'm not surviving and needing the basics, where I can stop and think about stuff and just recognizing, that my head is full of sound bites for that reason. And it's almost like, a little Rolodex of sound bites for every occasion. And we talked about like recognizing that there's no such thing as failure. And if you can really, really dive into what that means and that you either win or you learn. And that's it. And it's just every day is a school day in that sense. Then if you really buy into that principle of, well, today I've got a majority of things right, but there's something I can probably learn, learn from that conversation, be open to talking to other people, and just like you say about gatekeepers and just trying to understand, what makes you tick, really. I think it's really important that, we all probably need to spend a bit of time just analyzing, yeah, but why do I react like that? Why do I, feel the need and that urge to go and gamble? Because that's surely got to be part of the journey moving forward to actually understand a little bit of why, but not sink into that pit again.
Oh yeah, big time, yeah. And it's I think as I said earlier about, moving forwards and doing the right thing and acknowledging, like you said, or another acronym as such is first attempt in learning. Like obviously fail and you either you win or you learn, and acknowledging like what's happened, full stop in my life, that way it's happened. Like what happens moving forwards, that's down to me and obviously some other factors. But it's something that I appreciate I went through because lived experiences, conversations, understanding my own mental health. At the time, I was thinking like, this isn't really. I didn't think I had mental health issues or problems at the time. Well, I obviously did,
Mm.
and acknowledging it and reaching out and having open and frank, transparent conversations has moved forward. And I've gone past that stage now of like, what people think. And, I'd like to think I'm a good guy, I'm respected, but I can, my auntie always says, do the right thing. I'd like to think deep down I do. I try and help as many people. I help myself. I'm driven. I'm passionate. If
But
things,
just the fact that you even acknowledge that, to you, I think that's what I'm trying to maybe articulate, is just the fact that you even acknowledge that you recognize that what's at your core value is you want to do the right thing. Whereas I'm pretty sure there's people out there that don't even think like that.
yeah,
That
yeah,
don't even think, well, what is a good right thing? And I always wonder whether it's better off to be like ignorance is bliss, you know.
it's another conversation, I think. But yeah,
Yeah, you get what I mean? No,
yeah, yeah,
it's just like, I've known plenty of people that don't think and procrastinate maybe as much as I do, which then leads me, down a pathway. But I always seem to rise out of that pathway just going, oh, I get it now. That's why I was thinking like that. Oh, well, what you need to do then to avoid that in the future is maybe not do A, B, C, okay, and try and fill the time a bit better and differently, and just, you know, as Elsa would say, just let it go. And that's it becomes my catchphrase at work at one point, because I was just like coaching a lot of people, and just all those fears and anxieties, like we were saying, that build up in your head. And it is a fear of judgment, and judgment basically is just a comparison, isn't it? So if you're stuck in, whether it be gambling or addiction, and you start to recognize that, well, then that's almost like a little hole in the dam, in it. The water starts to seep in, and that water is really guilt, sudden recognition of guilt and shame. Well, you've got to get over that part as well to be able to be open and transparent about it. Because if you're not going to stand there, like I said, other people will probably explain the 12 steps, etc., better. And you know, I know that potentially we've got other people lined up in the future, you know, to talk to, you know, about these sorts of things. But I just find it very interesting how easy it is to dive back in to, you know, looking backwards, regret. And like one of the great sort of metaphors I've ever had for that really is you you try driving a car with the windscreen all blacked out and you're only allowed to use the rear view mirror. How how quickly you're going to crash?
Oh yeah, yeah, straight away, pretty much.
And that's what it is. If you're always looking over your shoulder, if you're always looking backwards, you're going to crash. You know, it's going to be a worst case scenario. You know, it's going to take seconds. Best case scenario, it's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride until you figure out, yeah, I need to clear my windscreen and start looking forward.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
really,
that,
that's a great metaphor for life, really.
yeah, well, that's one that I've used in trying to explain, you know, like how I was feeling at the time, you know, like work wise. Best way I could describe it, work wise and personally, was in work. It was like looking out of a normal window. I could see crystal clear, but then when I come out of work, it was like a bathroom window. Like my mind all of a sudden would just frost, glaze, you know, autopilot, and dare I say, not be asked. And I just was a completely different person, and one that I never want to be again. And I've been open with those, and it kind of. I've also used the analogy of in work. I felt like Superman because I think I met you at the time, and things were kicking off. We start again in a good way, and obviously I've other organisations I was involved with and projects, and but out of work, I felt like Banana Man. So it kind of literally went from that to that. And I'd always stay at work.
That's got to be such a common feeling. I mean, you saying that, I mean, that's what it is, isn't it? It's just the experience of highs and lows
Oh yeah,
all
yeah.
the time.
And
And I state, you know, and I said it out loud the other day about, you know, my ambition. If I do have goals, and I literally try not to set goals, you know, I've made a deliberate attempt, you know, a decision, shall we say, not to set goals at all. When really what I want is this constant, you know, nice, calm waters. I don't want the joy and exaltation that's then followed by that deep trough. You know, what I'm looking for is that peace and contentment and that even keel. And I know that only comes from reflecting on when you feel that emotion. Like I was feeling really anxious the other day and I knew it, you know, and it's just a case of, okay, feel it, ride it out and move it forward. I'm curious as to like what advice would you give to someone who might be listening and what advice do you give to people that you might now hear that are in the same boat as you know?
I good question really because obviously everyone's.
Or maybe if you say like, what would you tell your old self like
I
10 years ago?
I think on what I would have said 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when it all kind of started, 5 and a bit years ago, was it 5 and a bit? Yeah, yeah. Anyway, roughly that it's actually okay to feel how you're feeling. That seeking help and being open about it is okay because you know there are loved ones and support networks of people that care for you. They might not be related directly, and
Do you think you didn't then? Do you think that
um,
was half the problem?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to name names, but yeah, I genuinely felt if I said something, oh, the black sheep, or you know, um,
That judgment, yeah.
yeah, very judgmental, and it did happen. If I'm being open, and you know, yeah, of course, I wanted it to stop. You know, I made that clear. Like, you know, I'm very passionate about my work, and you know me better than most, really. That I am passionate about growth, development, and not necessarily income, but striving to be the best version of me personally and professionally, and everything that comes with that. But at the time, I remember talking about it to people. Oh, just stop. If you want it to stop, it will stop. I was like, yeah, it's, and in theory, some of it's true, but I was kind of trying to explain things, and I think it was educating people. But the best advice I'd give to people is, you're not alone. There are people out there, and being open and wanting to change. I watched a TED talk because when I'm at work, I listen to them and I watch them, and I always forget his name, but Reese Corporate, Lance Corporate, someone. Honestly, it was like watching myself. Now, obviously, at the time he was in the army, and I think he won like some prestigious award where he got a fancy knife and off the Queen, a sword even, and like after that he worked in the bank city in London earning like 500 grand. So obviously not too dissimilar to me, joking. But the more and more he was talking, some of the things he was talking about his family and and he talks about that one moment, like he was a big rugby fan and on the TV, and he's listened to it thousands of times before, and then all of a sudden, bing, light bulb, and it spiraled. Anyway, cut a long story short, he ended up selling this like special award that only one or few people ever get, and he was basically gone from hero to zero very quickly, and people found out, and some stuff had happened with his son, and I'm sitting at work at the time, and you know what happened in that scenario, so I'll keep that one a bit quiet. But towards the end, I'm sitting there, and I can feel myself welling up. It was like, so I went back to, once again, I'll keep this private, but family members at the time, and I said to them, "Watch this TED talk," and I could hear the pin drop. He was like, "Oh, why?" And I said, "Well," I opened up. I was like, and that was it. Then, like some, mix of reactions, and it just kind of that relief, that sheer like,
Yeah, must have been a right weight off.
weight off my shoulders, and it, you know, and the
It's
advice.
secretive by nature, isn't it?
Yeah. And I said to people, like, people would talk about, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, you work really hard and the money goes in one hand and out. Yeah, like, no shit, Sherlock. And I didn't mean to be rude, but I'm kind of aware of that. I don't want this to happen, hence why I'm here, hence why I'm talking. I do have dreams and aspirations, and I've been very, very, very fortunate to have friends like yourself and family and that have supported me and helped me. And luckily, I don't think it's affected anyone. Now, I know I'm spoken about behind closed doors. I ain't stupid. I ain't daft. And some of
Well,
those,
we all are, mate.
yeah. And that's something that I've learned to just like accept and like get on with it. I'm very aware that family members and, people in like my life.
I think it's just interesting, Stuart. That like I said, you're just listening to you talk then and just thinking, everybody knows I still smoke, and the amount of people who go, like it happened to me the other day. I came out of work and one of my colleagues just in the car park was saying goodbye, and she goes, "Oh, that's really bad for you, I went, really? Oh, I could have sworn it was all right. Well, what are all these messages on the packet about then? It's just like, come on. It's not that I don't know. It's for whatever reason, I'm wanting to continue, or I'm masking the fact that I can't stop, or whatever it may be. I think that must go right across the board at any sort of addiction, whether it be smoking, gambling, or whatever. It's like when I go to the doctor, if somebody, when I go to the doctors is a prime example, how many do you smoke? You're always going to say 5 less than you do.
Yeah.
If somebody asks you how much do you drink, you're always going to say 5 tins less than you do a week, or how many units or whatever.
And going off that,
it's secretive, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's just the embarrassment that comes with it.
Yeah. I somehow managed to stay afloat. And once again, I'm not going to mention names, both personally and professionally, people who helped me and sort of really understood. But it got to that point where I need to really fix up. Like, I need to make a decision. I either carry on doing what I'm doing and lose it all potentially, and not potentially. I did think about it once. And on the flip side, go down the path which I'm on now and I want to remain on, but I ain't daft. I know I could go left and right, on the moat, like slightly divert, but as long as I'm going forwards the best I can, and it's sort of acknowledging that I'm not afraid to talk about it anymore. Like, as we've just said, and a friend of mine earlier on the phone, actually, we had a bit of a catch up, and he was saying, I said about, over the last year, like, there's been people personally and professionally that all of a sudden, like, I would say, have spoken to me, and more in a work sense. I'm a bit like, I'm unsure why, and I've tried to move forwards, and some of that scenario, and I've kind of like, well, I don't know what else I could do. Like, I'm still friends with a lot of people. I'm still working with a lot of people. And I can only move forwards. It's as simple as, time will pass. Chip and what's the phrase? The fish and chip paper. It'll be fish and chip paper, and that's kind of all I've really focused on now. I'm very lucky to be where I'm at, both personally and professionally, and I am taking each day as it comes. And I think that the pleasure that I have in helping people who are in my situation, who have been in my situation, and it's quite common that it's not just me, and that's what I've learned.
I think the other thing that is always, whatever scenario you find yourself in, is one. I'm thinking to myself, it's surely you just need to remember a couple of things. One, it's never too late. So don't say, well, it's too late for me to change. I've been doing, it's the same with me in smoking. It's never too late. I've got to find that inner motivation, like probably like yourself when you was in Oslo, you know. Uh, but it's also you've got to find a reason. That reason's got to be either yourself predominantly, because changing for somebody else can't always be the answer. I'm sure that works for some people, but surely it's got to be about you and you wanting to change and recognize you want to be, like you said, a better version of yourself.
Oh
I
yeah,
just thought, I mean, and I also think that it's got to come from a place of sort of, like they say, the first thing is to accept you've got a problem. There must be so many people out there that, that don't recognize, like we've talked about before, another one of those sound bites out, is it skill or will? And we were talking about this in a sort of professional context. Is it that you haven't got the skills, or is it that you haven't got the will? So, and a bit like me, it's not that I don't have the skills. I clearly don't have the will, because I know the information. I know how to do it. I know that there's patches available, there's medication available, there's support groups and things. It's not that I don't know that. So it's not skill, is it? It's
yeah,
will.
yeah. No,
And I think those are the conversations that you really need to be having before you can make any decision, really.
yeah, no, it's true, mate. And I don't. I was going to say I don't regret. I have a sense of remorse with it now, but I know deep down that I've tried to remain who I am, the person I am, humble, grateful, caring, loving, etc. And
But
move.
it's made you the person who you are, though, Stuart, don't
Oh
you
yeah,
think?
and
We're
I,
all molded by good and bad
oh
things.
yeah, and I acknowledge that, and I've said quite open to a few people, like, if I've upset you, you know me really well, mate, and you know that it's not something I intend to do is upset anyone. Never have, and if I have, I'll always say sorry and own up and put my
I've probably upset loads of
yeah.
people.
But then I've learned now is like it's happened, like it's gone
I
that.
can think of a few ex-girlfriends that I've upset, trust me.
Oh, I'm staying quiet on that one. But no, mate, I feel happier like talking about it with you now, because I'd phone you, we'd talk about it, and I remember
You
reaching.
know,
Go
you know, sorry, Stuart. It just, what it reminds me of? It's something that I sort of learned a while ago, and obviously, we've all done things in our past that we regret, or you know, don't, imagine a scenario. I'm sure there's a video out there, and we might drop it in the links, and stuff. about, imagine if the worst thing that you'd ever done was stapled across your forehead, like tattooed, and you could never get rid of it. And just imagine what the world would be like. You're walking down the street, gambler,
Oh yeah,
addict,
yeah. I mean,
liar, cheater,
yeah,
just and that's how people really judge people, even on just perceptions without a bloody tattoo. That's
yeah,
what people are like anyway.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think there's a lot to do with that. And I think I learned this power. Power comes from almost like the last scene in 8 Mile and Eminem going, yeah, my mum's white trash. This is where I live on the wrong side of the track. Blah blah blah. Now what are you going to say?
yeah,
And it's something that I really realised. There's real power in going, yeah, I did this, I did this, I did that, I did that. Now what? What are you going to say to me about that? I already know it.
yeah. And that's what I've learned, mate. Like as I keep referring to, like personally and professionally, like I'm moving forwards. Like I try and do the right thing every day in everything I do. You know, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And yeah, mate, I feel more. I feel cleansed. Cleansing.
It's a lot freer, a lot lighter, maybe using that analogy, it's a lot lighter to live your life like that. Well, what are you going to say about me?
Yeah, and I've learned to, like, you know what, the world's got so many billion of people in it. I've been fortunate to travel far and wide, and there's more places to hit on that destination and
Yeah,
destination.
it's really interesting. Like I said, most of us, if we're honest, you know, we're trying to find the balance in life. It's like a spectrum all of the time. And we'll find, you know, between acceptance and rejection. None of us want to be rejected, judged, falls into that sort of category, and we're just all craving acceptance. We all want to be loved and told that we're a wonderful person and how great you are at your job and all of that stuff. And really, the trick is trying to find a balance, just tiptoe down that middle corridor. I think that's the trick. That's what I'm trying to aspire to probably every day. And like what I was saying earlier, when it goes wrong, I'm down this end. I'm fearing rejection. I'm feeling rejected. I'm feeling, like I said, my mind starts playing tricks and it's going, yep, they all think you're rubbish. Yep. Or you're going to be rubbish. And they're all going to laugh at you, John. And, like the Emperor's New Clothes, all of a sudden everyone's going to realize what a fake.
Yeah, yeah,
And that fraud feeling, you're a fraud. I think that's prevalent in everybody's life. It's just, like I said, we're all trying to keep the balance nice in the middle. Let's not make any tremors. I just think it's really interesting. Everybody really needs to get their heads around. All we're ever doing is, we're either, fearing rejection or craving acceptance, and
yeah.
we're just tiptoeing along the middle.
And that's kind of some, not kind of. I keep referring, like, using that phrase. I have acknowledged this last year that it is what it is. Like you said, like I can't accept everything. I can't seek everyone's approval. Like, for what, if people don't want to if people want to have that perception or view of me, fair enough, without any conversation. But I can't control that. If people don't want to, I'm thinking, well, okay, is it really affecting me? Am I losing that sleep on it? And I was listening to a podcast, and the presenter, was referring to that. He's openly admitted that he said to the family member, "Look, I'm not pretending anymore. Like, I'm not wasting my energy. It's not working. Blah blah blah. I'll always be here the best I can be, but, like, draw a line in the sand and move forwards." And that's what I've done with individuals. Like I was saying, the world's a big place, and I'm
You
sure that,
can't please everybody, Stuart. I think that's that. I don't know what point in your life, you realise that, and when I realised, it's just you cannot please everybody. You cannot make everybody happy all of the time, as they say.
yeah.
And,
Well,
and
I realise that
actually,
now, I guess.
like I've said that at work recently, it's just like I don't go to work to make friends. I've got loads of friends, thanks. Quite fortunate in that sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Friendship happens over a period of time through an exchange of experiences and Did they treat me right in that time? How did they respond when I opened up? When I was feeling bad, did they say, "I'll get over it"? You know, British stiff upper lip and all of that. Did they respond in the right way? No, well, clearly then, you know, they shouldn't be in my friendship circle. And you
Yeah,
move along.
and it's something I'm mindful of now, mate. To be honest, but yeah, well, looking at the clock, mate, I'm cautious of time. I mean, we've been chatting.
We could go all night, you know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, I mean, just over 50 minutes, and yeah, as always, it's I feel a lot better, you know, out of all the chats we've had, you know, uh, two blokes and a phone conversations we've had. I found this one personally very therapeutic. You know, I think it's reassured me that having conversations, and we've had quite a few personally this week on the phone, and the one now, you know, how better I feel in myself, and I hope I've made you feel that way, and vice versa as well.
I just think it's just so important, you know, just I can only talk about myself, how important it is to vent and let that steam valve out. You know what I mean? How you're feeling as I did it, you know, the other day. You need to get it out. It doesn't do you any good, you know. I'm sure there are doctors and scientists that would tell you it just doesn't do you any good.
Oh no,
Bottle that up physically and mentally,
yeah,
you know.
the other analogy that I've had for that, and I learned this on the mental health first aid course not so long ago, that basically it's like a bucket, isn't it? And
Yeah, yeah.
if you let water fill up, obviously it's going to overspill. Whereas on the side of the bucket, you have, like you said, like a valve, and just letting it out. And I do feel better, you know, for having this chat today, because it's come up in my mind again, you know. And like I said, I'm very lucky to be in the position I'm in at the moment, but I always want more. I think that's the nature of how I'm wired. I want more. I want to be bigger and better, and you know that. But I'm grateful for what I've got. I'm very grateful for who I have around me, and those support networks, conversations have been very, yeah, very useful. Let's say.
Good stuff. Well, I'll let you crack on. It's very late at the moment, so
No.
yeah,
I was,
been a long day.
I can hopefully carry on with my internet allows it to watch Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I mean, I'm only at the beginning, but yeah, for those of you
Let me
that
tell you about the end. No, I won't do
it will be one bloke on a phone if you do.
that.
But no, before we end the chat, for those of you that are watching, we really hope that you take something from these conversations, and we want you to subscribe, share, far and wide, because that's why we do it. John's helped me out massively over the years, and through having chats and vice versa. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your weekend, John. Good result for the Arsenal today, by the way. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah. Well, one of your team's out, so you've still got another 5 to go
Yeah,
still.
yeah.
You're
Well,
all
Aston Villa. Actually, no, Wolves won. Did United win in the end?
I don't know, mate.
I was off. Anyway, yeah, good goal.
Like I said, that's the beauty of having more than one team. You can just pick a winner every week, can you?
Anyway, mate, thank you as always, and I'll speak to you soon, mate. All right.
Yeah, nice one, buddy.
Top man.
Take care.
Take care. Bye, mate.